warm welcome to you all and thank you for choosing Civic Space TV. This is the Citizens Chat Show. I'm your host, Judith Atim. And today we are discussing the UPDF Amendment Bill 2025. And we're asking, will Parliament defy the Supreme Court? But before I introduce my guests, let me give you a bit of context or background to what we're discussing today. Our members of Parliament are set to retable in Parliament the UPDF Amendment Bill 2025, and this is coming less than 3 months after the Supreme Court blocked the trial of civilians in military courts. Just recently, on the 10th of April, the Prime Minister Robin Anabanja submitted a formal statement to the Speaker of Parliament that the UPDF Amendment Bill 2025 is scheduled for debate during the parliamentary week, this week to be precise. And this bill is quite a contentious one for many Ugandans who view it as an attempt by the legislature to circumvent the Supreme Court ruling of January 31st that said the trial of civilians in military courts is unconstitutional. The 7 judges also ordered that all ongoing or pending criminal trials against civilians before the court-martial immediately cease and be transferred to the ordinary courts of law with competent jurisdiction. But after the Supreme Court ruling, we saw the NRM Parliamentary Caucus resolve to withdraw an earlier version of the UPDF Amendment Bill in light of the Supreme Court judgment that prohibited the General Court-Martial from trying civilians. The caucus, recently chaired by President Yoweri Museveni, directed the Attorney General, Chiriwa Chiwanuka, to prepare a revised bill that accommodates the concerns raised by the Supreme Court. But the question most Ugandans are grappling with is, now, the version to be tabled before Parliament, does it reflect the revisions recommended by the Supreme Court, or shall it defy the Supreme Court by reintroducing contentious provisions which have been deemed unconstitutional? Ladies and gentlemen, these are some of the questions that my guest here in the studio will be addressing in today's show. And without further ado, let me take this opportunity to introduce from my immediate left, Dr. Robert Ojambo, Head of History Department at Kyambogo University. Dr. Ojambo, always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
With us also today in the studio is Dr. Bireete, Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance. Always a pleasure to have you in the studio, Doctor.
Thank you, and good afternoon, viewers.
And we also have Mr. Joseph Ochieno, political commentator and UPC Ideologue. Good afternoon, Joseph, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Last but not least is retired Major Awich Pollar, Director, External Relations at the NRM. He's also an advocate of the High Court. Welcome, Major.
Thank you, and greetings to our viewers.
So today we shall also explore what this UPDF Amendment Bill 2025 aims to achieve, particularly in light of the Supreme Court's decision. And I'll start with you, Major, because you sit with when the NRM Parliamentary Caucus is sitting, you also attend some of this. You are a member, absolutely. So what are the key proposed amendments related to the jurisdiction of the military courts over civilians that the party is talking about? If you could just give us some insights into the perspectives of the ruling party regarding this UPDF Amendment Bill.
Well, thank you so much. It's true I sit in a caucus because caucus is an organ of the party which is provided for under the Constitution. It's an organ just like the Women League, the Youth League, and all those. So caucus, NRM Parliamentary Caucus is an organ of the party. So as a director, I sit there. Now, I don't remember sitting in this particular caucus which talked about this, but I could pretty have an idea about this because this is a topical matter. And just an overview is that matter of law is a matter that all citizens should take with care because it has no color, it has no party. We are aware about the Bingira case where Bingira was passed a law called Preventive Detention Act, which was providing that if government sees somebody about to commit a crime, you arrest that person. So how do you know I'm about? So the idea is to make prevention, prevent you from committing a crime. People quarrel about it, they want a Bingira, but a Bingira became a victim. He was arrested under the same law. Therefore, whether you are NRM or what, opposition, a law should be a law. We should make it with uttermost good intention because it can catch up with anybody. Secondly, I like to say that NRM and the caucus is aware about Article 69. Article 69 of the Constitution provides that Parliament shall not make a legislation to defeat a court ruling.
92.
92? Well, fine. A good lawyer is not the one who crams a law, but knows where to find it. So if I had a text, I would do it. But since my land Barantari sister could have looked at it, I think it is it. So article, that provision provides that Parliament shall not make a law to defeat a court ruling. And therefore, we are alive to this. Now, this therefore makes me say what could be in the intended bill. First of all, I tried to get this bill. I checked with the Speaker's office. It is not yet in Parliament. It's still with the first Parliamentary Council. It has not yet reached Parliament. So until we get the last draft, whatever we are saying it, what we guess might be, because even tonight there can be a provision, tomorrow that provision can be removed, or a new one will be inserted. So until it comes on the table, until it is stable, we can't know, but we can fairly guess what is there. Especially when we can guess what is the mischief this amendment is intended to cure. The core mischief this amendment is intended to cure are basically two. One, to address concerns of the Supreme Court about the court itself. Does the court meet the criteria of, say, a fair hearing, including officers there too? The other mischief the army, the mover, the sponsor of the bill wants is to address the mischief of people using guns to commit crimes, where they think these guns is a preserve of the army. So this is the key to mischief that being done. First of all, about the court ruling. The court ruled that civilians should not be tried in military courts. But the understanding or the reading, and this will be subject to debate in Parliament, is that the lead rule, the lead judge, which was the Chief Justice, in his ruling seemed to say that if first of all, the Army Court must put officers who are qualified judges of the High Court. Therefore, the Army has enough resources in that respect. I studied with many of them because remember me, I studied when I was a soldier. I was a Kadogo, and therefore I came to university when I was already a lieutenant. I left my career when I was a captain. So I know the military officers, those who studied when they're soldiers in law school, and those who joined the army when they're already lawyers. In fact, the military lot, many classmates are now judges of the Supreme Court, so they qualify. Now, that one in the lead ruling of Windolo is being enforced to the extent that the court now says for those who will be committing crimes, it must be a crime accompanied with a gun. For example, a rape. If you use a gun to rape, according to this bill, is different from somebody who uses a rope hanging the girl to rape. Under this provision of the bill, such a person, if there are two people, Waswa and Kato used the gun to rape, and Waswa used the rope to rape. The one who used the rope will go to civilian court. The one who used the gun will go to court martial, will be a subject to court martial. Therefore, the mischief intended in this case, therefore, is that one, crimes that are connected to guns. First, it must be a crime accompanied with the use of a gun. They think it should be subject to military courts, and therefore it will drive the mischief of people misusing guns. The other thing is, of course, as I said, is to restructure the court in accordance to the ruling of the Supreme Court. For example, no civilian will be going from unit disciplinary up to division court. No. Such subject of civilians that are deemed to be the exceptions that the lead judgment created will only go to court martial. But there is also provisions of amendment like removal of court martial appeal. I don't know whether from the court martial appeal, we are yet to see the detailed draft, whether you'll merge to civilian courts or not. Because the other provision was that in the case of Lieutenant Ogwang, it was argued that you cannot appeal to, the appeal was entertained in civilian court with a erroneous provision of regulations by Imam Babas. Now that regulation might be captured into the act, because you don't create a law by regulation, you create a law by an act of parliament. So there may be, we are yet to see the final draft, there may be a provision that you can therefore appeal to civilian courts thereafter. Now, therefore, the intended bill is first, under no circumstance must it defeat a court ruling. Two, the mischief that is being addressed are two, use of gun, which is a preserve of the army, and the possible operationalization of the Supreme Court ruling, including getting qualified members in the court martial.
Thank you very much. I think I'll allow you, Sarah, to go. Thank you, first of all, Major, for setting the pace for the conversation, giving us that background as well. But I'm sure Sarah has questions, perhaps, or...
A mouthful of them.
Okay.
You know, as my land friend was submitting, at any civilian with a gun, then my head ran to cases of aggravated robbery, cases of, you know, like Koyero, cases of Jamil Mukulu, cases of, if you say any civilian found in possession of a gun will be subject of court martial, are you taking over authority of aggravated robbery and other cases related from civilian courts? Anyway, that's besides the point.
If we go, I forget I was giving an example. Also, the offense of cattle rustling is regarded among these exceptions. The offense of cattle rustling.
And aggravated robbery?
There's an exception of about 6.
So
I can't remember.
Anyway, let's
they
say...
will not be tried in the military courts, but rather taken to the civilian court.
The exceptions were admissibility of civilian to the court. The exception, in other words, they're saying no civilian should be tried in army court except this following. So that is the exception, that following the Supreme Court ruling, no civilian will be tried in military courts except civilian falling under this category.
So if you go back to the Supreme Court, and how did we find ourselves, first of all, as a country, in this situation? The NRM regime, or NRA, like Joe likes calling it, came on a slogan of demystifying the gun. Did Chakam courses, did whatever they did, saying they are going to demystify the gun. Never again will a gun be used to torture Ugandan citizens. Under the same regime, we have seen the degeneration to Chifesi, Boda 2010, Bijambia, all kinds of thuggery that they have presided over, especially in urban centers like Kampala Metropolitan. Under their watch, leadership, connivance, and among others, we have seen mobile money robberies. The report said most of them, it's soldiers involved. A few cases is police, but almost all mobile money robberies are conducted by state agencies using a few hardcore criminals here and there. So this is the regime that is now coming, of course, without authority, to say anybody with a gun, bring them to us. But they are the same people terrorizing citizens with guns. But away from that, so they have no more authority to propagate whatever they are propagating. Away from that, and legally speaking, if you go to the Supreme Court decision, as much as citizens celebrated, the outlaw of civilians, there were some little gaps that only somebody with the devilish intentions can exploit. But on face value, it would have been a very good judgment, and the celebrations of Ugandans were not in vain. Why do I say so? They outlawed trial of civilians in court martial. The majority decision, 5-7,
Yes.
outlawed any elements of trial of civilians in court martial. I have had the opportunity of listening to the director legal of NRM, Council Barata. His thinking was trying to ride on the two dissenting judgments that created exceptions. If you do this, you can qualify. But these are dissenting judgments. When you are looking at a judgment, you take the majority. So we have a 5-2 decision. And the majority judgment is the judgment of court. It is not the dissenting judgment. So when you go to the dissenting judgments, the two judges tried to create conditions. If you dress up in a black suit, then you can look like a judge, kind of thing. But a judge is a judge. It is not the dressing. So the NRM is riding on that, trying to dress up. Why am I saying this? Our constitution is very clear on the doctrine of separation of powers. The Supreme Court, in its own ruling, indeed confirmed that the basic structure doctrine is premised on the doctrine of separation of powers of the 1995 Constitution. What does that mean? That there are distinct duties of each of the arms of government: the executive, the legislature, the judiciary. The executive can initiate laws. They can't make. The legislature makes laws. They can't interpret them. The judiciary interprets laws. But now where we are, and I'm just using that as a basic defining factor, where we are, the executive is fighting so hard to usurp the functions of the judiciary over citizens of the Republic of Uganda. So it's not just about the decision of court. It's about the Constitution. What does it mean if you have the military court trying civilians? In simple words, it means that the military will be the investigator. No, they will be the complainant, investigator, prosecutor, judge, and jury. That defeats all forms of justice. It even defeats the rules of natural justice, that you cannot be a judge in your own case. Let me just use the present case of Dr. Besige. Who is the complainant? The army. Who is the investigator? The army. Who is the witness? The army. And they wanted to be the judge and the jury in the same case. So when you propagate that you want to try any civilians suspected of being in possession of arms, Afanda Awich, my land friend, you are propagating that the army, which is in charge of keeping security in this country, protecting civilians with their property, protecting the territorial integrity of Uganda as a country, you want to be the complainant, you want to be the investigator, You want to be the prosecutor. You want to be the witness. You want to be the judge and jury over the justice and fundamental rights and freedoms of Ugandans. In which country does such a thing happen? The excuse of being in possession of guns or possible abuse of guns, if we are at proportionate citizens versus men and women in uniform, 80% of abuses of guns in Uganda today, not in the past, is under the people in state agencies. 80% of gun abuse. The same government has refused to do proper registry of guns in the arms of civilians. I am privy to information where the president dishes out guns together with money to young people during campaigns. There is one youth leader who went to State House, given money. He was then a chairperson of the National Youth Council, given money and a gun, pistol. When he went back, given money and another pistol, the young man said, but sir, you already gave me a pistol. I have one. Said, you might need another. Who is in charge of failing or vulgarizing gun control in this country? The NRM. Now they are masquerading because they want the military court as a tool for repression, as a tool for President Museveni to harass his competitors like Besigye, Bobi Wine and others. That's the main purpose. That is the object of the amendment regarding trial of civilians in court martial, is to have a tool under the control of President Museveni to control his opponents and take away their freedom without going through the due process of courts. What were the issues raised in the Supreme Court decision? Lack of independence. Because before the Army Court passes a decision, unless it is involving these non-entities and whatever, they go to Army Council, to the president. Should we pass a death sentence? Should we pass? So the president becomes a chief justice. He wants his own court, where he is a decision maker of saying, no, pass a death sentence for Sarah. She talks too much. Pass whatever, life sentence for Joseph, you know, UPC don't like. That's what he wants. And that's what this amendment is about, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah. Ojambo, Dr. Ojambo, let's hear from you. Major there gave us at least that insight, and then we've heard from Sarah a number of things, including, of course, the legal and constitutional implications of this amendment.
Yeah, Judith, you know, there is a joke that has been running that if MPs, which means members of parliament, are given money, they can amend the Bible. You take a Bible to parliament and you give them some money and tell them that now where there is Jesus, put Muhammad. And where there is the other one in Israel, put that it was in Rwachitura. They will amend the Bible. I can tell you those people. And why I can tell you that they can amend that law of yours in a matter of second is when the debate began. And all people are saying, no, 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 no. You cannot take civilians. We are NRM. We are whatever. This does not matter. The way my senior colleague there started. That you know law is law. When they came back from the caucus, they started speaking things which you don't understand. Saying, and they have been blindfolding Ugandans, telling them that these criminals who are using guns, and you know every Ugandan fears a criminal. A very good example, which is of the weaklings, is the Karamojongs, because they know these ones cannot defend themselves.
The poor Karamojongs.
If they talked about Baganda or Banyankole, a society would have now come up and said, how can you use us? But poor Karamojongs, they say Karamojong wrestling was stopped using that thing is called what?
Iron sheet.
That thing is
Which is
court martial. Those court martial has helped us to deal with the 13,000 Karamojong Rasola cases. Then people say, oh, Karamojongs. You know, Karamojongs has been used. You know,
Yeah.
I can tell you a brief story of Israel and Palestine, how they breed the hatred. An Israelite parent buys a doll, gives it to a child. After a few minutes, has enjoyed the doll, steals it, and says, a Palestinian has stolen your doll. So the child grows up knowing that a Palestinian is a thief, a bad person, and therefore that hatred. So Karamojongs have been used as scarecrows in this country, as cattle rustlers, bad people, and therefore when the president sits there and explains, people are even clapping for him. When these Karamojongs are Ugandans who are supposed to be treated well like any other person. So I can tell you that MPs will pass that law. But let's now go to the substance. Judith, I want us to answer 3 questions. The first question, is court martial an invasion of Uganda? The answer is no. Court martial is an invasion which was brought here by colonialists. And the British and other people have court martials. Do court martials in Britain behave like court martials in Uganda? For us who borrowed from them? No. Court martial in Britain is for only serving officers in the army. And it is for the purpose of disciplining soldiers. More so at the battle.
Not more so, actually, strictly at operational level.
At
yes.
operational,
One time.
when
Yeah.
people are in the battlefront. A soldier who commits a crime in Britain is treated like any
That's
other
correct.
British.
Yeah.
You have committed, and that is what majority, as I want to borrow her word, majority judgment said, that a soldier who commits an offense outside the battlefield should be treated as a person who has committed an offense elsewhere, a penal code. That was said by Owinyindolo.
Yeah.
So in my view, here we are using the court martial to do other things, but not administration of justice. That is the first thing. Question 2. When this matter of amendment came, was it only dealing with the issues of court martial? No. Remember, before the judgment that was made by the Supreme Court, there was already a bill in Parliament that had been put there to amend the army, is called what?
The UPDF Act.
UPDF Act. And the issue was to incorporate some organs of the security services that are not right now in the Act. For example, organs like SFC, organs that are not regulated by any law. Now they have brought JAT and others. So they wanted to deal with those ones. But they also had other issues of the UPDF that they wanted to amend. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the judgment is made. Then it was withdrawn. So Major, the amendment is not only dealing with the Supreme Court ruling. It has other issues that were already there. Number 3, and this is now the gist of the matter. I remember seated here telling you that I was very happy with the ruling, but I saw a mischief in the ruling of Owinyindolo and Company. I remember saying that, and Sarah here and another colleague said, no. They don't need to say it explicitly. And for me, with my layness, I was saying the judges should have, the justices should have said it explicitly. That because we have found this illegal, therefore, that's what they do in other cases. Because I told you that before that I'd read other cases. They said that since this person has been in an illegal system, therefore he's supposed to go home. They instead said they should be transferred. And that transfer, you have seen how it has caused problems. It has caused a lot of problems. Up to today, there is nobody who was in the court martial that has been even presented before the law in these courts of yours. Arrangements are being made, arrangements. The only persons who benefited were people who were on bail, like Kaba, Ziruka, because now for him there is nobody to pick him. But the ones who are in Luzira, Chitalia, and what have you, in fact, their life has become harder. In fact, it was better when they were in the court martial only. Now they even don't have, some of them don't know their fate up to today. Except Vesige, who they have not transferred the other case. They have instead charged him afresh. They have charged him with other charges in now civilian court. So, in my view, and when you told me that when I heard here that the president had had a previous discussion with the Chief Justice, then I saw a mischief. And therefore, the Chief Justice gave us a bird tied with the banana fibers, dry ones. That when you put it on the table, the banana fibers will break and the bird ran away. So that is the first problem. Now I come to the last issue that my senior colleague raised of mischiefs. And you see, when the people want to scare you, they use words like mischief. Mischief. Really, why should we have mischiefs in the country? So mischiefs are supposed to be things of wizards and complicated
legal
people.
terminology.
For sure, it is supposed to be for things which are not understood very well, very bad things. For me, I want to think that there are challenges. And for me, everything political is to use his words, a mischief. If we are to take that definition of mischief. For example, in Uganda, a person who uses a gun or who puts on a beret and he walks on a demonstration on the road saying, I don't like this leader or I don't like this system. And a man who picks up arms, goes to the bush, he butchers people, he steals people's animals, he rapes women, he does all atrocities that you can do in the world. Who is worse? The one with the beret, who is saying, I don't like this, the one being governed? The other one is okay when they take him to the civilian court. We have people here who have butchered people by record, recorded by NRM itself. The Koyelos, the what? They are in civilian courts. Jamil Mukulu is in a civilian court. If that Jamil Mukulu commanded the burning of children in Kichwamba, I'm just guessing because those are the things, if it is true. So that one, and the Bobi Wine boys who were singing in Kalangala, these ones are mischief, very serious people. And therefore they should be treated with mischief also. So me, I find that the government and the NRM are really taking Ugandans for fools. We need to be very serious. This is our country. There is no way you can start saying that if somebody has a gun. Sarah, the other day you gave me a very scary thing. That now what they are going to do is when they catch me with a gun in my boot, they give me a rank in army.
Yes.
So for sure, how do you recruit me in army because of having a gun? I've always told you that if I sleep in a garage, I don't become a car. So if what would be the problem? I want to ask Major as I end. What would be the problem if you find me with a gun and you take me to the criminal division of the High Court or wherever, and I'm charged in a civilian court with a clear system? I am telling you, with the army, even if they put those instructions of if you are a judge of a military combat, you still abide to the rules and regulations of UPDF. If a Fande so and so tells you that that man the way I've seen, convict him. Will you fail to convict him, and will you not also be tried in the same court for disobeying order?
Thank you, Dr. Ojambo. To you now, Joseph, but I'd also like, in your response, if you could also articulate issues of the supremacy of the high or of the civilian courts in light of these amendments. What would this mean? And also issues of fair trial, like some of your colleagues have talked about, and the potential for abuse, especially for political opponents. Because I think these are some of the contentious issues that Ugandans are grappling with. But just from your perspective as a political commentator, what do these developments actually mean for these three issues that I've outlined? And I'd also like to hear the same from you, Major, later. The supremacy of the civilian courts, issues of fair trial, concerns of fair trial, and also the potential for abuse, especially of political opponents, if should they find themselves in the military courts. Joseph.
You know, I'll surprise you perhaps that my submission might be far more brief than it normally would be. But first I must concede that as Robert was suggesting when we were celebrating the rather definitive, in normal terms, definitive ruling by the Supreme Court, and when Sarah was substantially satisfied, I was actually the other party that said that, that backed the view that the clarity of the ruling was such that if this was a normal country, one which is not run by predominantly military men, controlled by a military man who has never been a Democrat, and that's Mr. Museveni, and a man who, to all intents and purposes, has brought us to this rather mischievous state of blackmail, national blackmail, and that I think, as Sarah suggested, that everything else that is happening, we can have this conversation till cows come home, but quite clearly it is the case that it's an advanced state of intimidation and blackmail of public opinion, leading to an election coming next year, which increasingly is becoming farther and farther from being a foregone conclusion, particularly for the presidential position that a person like Mr. Museveni would necessarily get 50% plus one, unless there is excess intimidation of the minds of the people of Uganda beyond what it has already been subjected to in the last several years. I think it's really that. Embed a culture in the minds of the people that, short of those terrible Karamojon guys who are guests of State House, there are so many others that we told you that we brought peace and you're refusing to acknowledge and to accept and to enjoy the peace on our terms. If we do not continue to push, and I must emphasize this, then things are going to fall off the cliff. Clearly, on that day, I was genuinely happy. We were all genuinely very happy. I feel...
Except to the number one, Susan.
You know, except, you know, and you know, and I'm feeling, am I wasting time, you fellow viewers? Am I wasting time? We keep on going round and round and round. And you know, this program is being featured on Good Friday, the day when Jesus was violently, you know, subjected to cruelty, you know, in the Holy Land. And we are discussing this, which we thought was, after several years, Sarah cried and cried and cried and cried about, oh, we don't know, when are you guys settling this thing? And it was settled, those who thought it was settled a few months ago. And here we are. How Mr. Museveni and his rather arrogant team could go and create, using our public resources, including the current space, including this Easter season that should others be a season of goodwill, you know, to go to breach Article 92 of his own constitution, which explicitly, of course, backed by lawyers, Robert, explicitly prohibits Parliament from passing laws that override court decisions.
They will change that one.
The point is, what form of legislation are this bunch of 100 million thieves, going to constitute and dress up to make it anything other than something contrary to a challenge of the constitutional provision, the judicial provision that we thought had been settled with the Supreme Court ruling as referred? I don't know. But because, as Robert said, and that's why I was rather a bit unfair, a bit harsh, as Robert says, that these guys can amend the Bible. But so they probably will come with it. So the exciting thing is that I want to say less and wait for that time when they begin to speak in tongues, starting with maybe head of legal, NRM, and then some of the top lawyers, and there's some top lawyers in government, and some of them my friends, I keep on saying that some of these are very decent guys. And then they're lawyers, and then they begin talking in tongues. And then you begin to see these guys, is it Chankwanzi? What exactly is it? Or is this a madness of curse taking place in this country?
But
that
Mr. Ochieno, the thing is that when they start speaking in tongues, they appointed judges.
That's what I'm telling you.
The correct
line. So anyway, you guys, whatever the case. So these guys will do that. So we hope and wait and see how some form of draft legislation appears. Because again, if you asked me 2 months ago, again, I think, I'm sorry to go around. I think second part of their conversation, I was one of those people, Robert, again, who put up my hand, who said, it's unlikely that these guys might come with this thing. So at some stage, I thought Mr. Museveni was decent enough to be respectful enough to simply say that, look, notwithstanding all the other concerns, respect the provisions, the provisions of the law. And I think Comrade Awich, and not putting on the spot, I think Comrade Awich at some stage also was reasonably confident that it was unlikely on the basis of the provisions of Article 92 of the Constitution, that's unlikely that NRA would come back with this. Now, if you consider the arguments being made about Karamoja, the arguments being made about proliferation of arms and firearms in public spaces, is it about the Bireete? What is it really? And that's why I said that except for election nearing and the extremes of terror and blackmail that Mr. Museveni subjects, there is really no formal legal and security, no formal security threats posed by politics of firearms in this country that would warrant us stretching this beyond where it is. In any case, I think the biggest indictment is on the same judiciary that Mr. Museveni says that I so much lack confidence in the judiciary establishment that has been my baby child created over 40 years, that they have the incapacity to try civilians in civilian courts. That is the point. But number two, that our judicial system is so weak that, as Robert said, that finding an army captain in the streets of Kamoche who's drunken and misused his firearms and is taken down the corner of Kira Road police station and finds himself in a court of law, there is no guarantee that the judicial process would handle him, so let's take him to Machindi and break his leg. It just doesn't make sense. So no, I think I don't want to make it too much of a formal conversation. It is quite clearly an insult to the people of Uganda. I think it's a desperate attempt by Mr. Museveni, and I think he's doing it because of the level of impunity. If you consider the manner in which his son responded to the situations, how his son continues to use this thing, and how shamefully Dr. Kizza Besigye continues to suffer, including talk other judges, and I wanted to conclude with that. The way this, she looks beautiful. I don't know how closely. You know, that judge who denied Kizza Besigye bail, you know, she did not look beautiful. And my beauty here means that I thought she was actually fairly clever, a decent lady. And she makes a fine ruling until she reaches a stage where she's being knocked by some kind of a wire thing from the end, meaning, you know, somebody saying, you know, say this, say this, say this. Okay, yes, but not granted because of those obnoxious arguments that she made to deny Kizza Besigye bail. I think we are a laughing stock as a nation state. Already, the Besigye thing is an extreme example, and the manner in which it happened, I think we shouldn't be having this topical conversation today. But anyway, it's NRA.
Thanks, Joseph. We'll give you the microphone after the break. Thank you. We'll be back shortly.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from the break, and we're glad that you're still with us here on the Citizens Chat Show. Of course, we're continuing with our discussion on the UPDF Amendment Bill 2025. Will Parliament defy the Supreme Court? And it's now your turn, Major Awich, to respond to. There's been quite a raft of questions and concerns and issues raised that we would need your clarity.
Well, first of all, let's begin from the fact that this is a proposed law. And being a proposed law, ideally, although Doctor would oppose this because he has said so, ideally we trust that the members of parliament are representative of the citizens in the assembly. But as Doctor says, that they can pass, change even the Bible. Well, there used to be a common saying in Britain that parliament has the power to do everything except change a woman into a man. So they have the mandate, but that mandate should be used very judiciously and for the interest of the people. They have the power, they can do anything. And they say that that power, we are the ones who gave them, that we gave them their power. So if parliament can amend the Bible, maybe they're using their power, but is it judiciously being used? Now, therefore, it is a proposed law, and it is going to be subject to debate, and we shall see. And we hope, therefore, that, like we said, the law should have no color or party. People will debate it sanely. This now, therefore, brings me to a point where Sarah was saying, it is me who wants. Whether it refers to me in person or me in plural, say like NRM or government, well, government tables a bill. It is the proposer or the sponsor of the bill. It has the duty to explain the source, and that's why it comes with mischief. What does this law intend to cure? Basically, that is why we talk of the diction, the choice of word mischief. Because a law must cure a situation. So it is not a witch, it is not what, but government. And government, the cardinal role of government is to protect society. So the proposition of a law is that government intends to protect society. And by the way, a good legal system, just as a way of, is that if we have good legal systems, it impacts even in production. For example, if you have guns marauding through the villages and everywhere, people can't be engaged in production because they will be insecurity. So a good law must crystallize into how it promotes production in the country. Now, on the issue of democratization of the guns, that is NRM which made people know the guns, it is NRM in use of the guns and the looting or the killing in the mobile money.
Yeah.
That is why the word mischief comes. That because we have democratized the gun, because people know the gun, because we have found the gun in use, that is why you want the law. And that is what we mean by a mischief being cured. Because as you know, society is dynamic, it is progressive. Even as you industrialize, you are crying for factories. You know that you create a problem of pollution. So one problem leads to another. You are here democratizing, saying, please, you should know the gun so that nobody can come and intimidate you. You create another problem. That is a normal contradiction in life. You want factories, you create pollution. It is progressive. The only beauty is that when you resolve a contradiction, you lead to a better level. And that is why it brings me now to a case like, if the previous court ruling, regardless of the dissenting argument, said don't take civilian to a military court, and we come up with a law which is again taking civilian to a military court, suppose we have now another case in court, because it will come. Somebody will again come up, because under that law, if you pass that law, for example, now I gave the exception of rep with a gun. If somebody is somebody reps using a gun and is taken to do court martial, somebody can again take up a constitutional court and say, why have you brought this person here under this law, and yet the Supreme Court has ruled otherwise? Therefore, it will again bring us back, and we hope if the society is pushed to that extent, it will therefore crystallize and we make a final position, hopefully. And that's why I'm saying every contradiction, if resolved, leads to a higher contradiction, and if further resolved, push society to a higher level. So if this law manages to again bring, with whatever exception that the members of parliament will see, it brings it back, then somebody will take up a case again in the event that somebody does that. Now, again on the issue of Karamoja falling under the exception, I think there's still a lot more literature that Ugandans don't understand about Karamoja that makes us make decisions the way we do. And even in the village, I happen to come from the eastern part of Lango or Acholi, where we border Karamoja. So we have had the experience of Karamoja. This lack of understanding used to happen. For example, President Museveni has a state house in a place called Baralegi in Utuke. Do you know that the people around Utuke, when Karamojong used to reach them and raid them, whenever they would run to another place in Aleptong called Apala. Apala is a place where the former Ngom of UNED comes from. I just like to pick names to make it easy. One time Karamojong reached them, they climbed on the trees to see Karamojong. That day they killed 80 people in Apala. So the people who had run with us from up to them said, yes, my brothers, you had told us we are running from famine. Now you have seen. So there's a lot not known. And that is why the justice system applied on Karamoja, people doubt it. Did you know that Karamojong can go to a raid to a level of a division where a single battalion of NRA cannot confront them? This is the gravity. This is the gravity. I once went with Minister Omonyo Jock and found a clash between two communities for raiding. The one around Moroto municipality is called, what is that community, doctor? There's the J and then the Mataniko. There was a clash between two communities in a small place like 2 folded out pitches. 600 dead bodies, you could rough estimate. There and no withdrawal, nothing. So the gravity of gun use in Karamoja And the fact that they can move like 400 kilometers to go and raid, like you move from Jinja or from Tororo.
What you are saying is absence of government.
So it needs a special justice system. So for somebody to say Karamojong are belittled, Karamojong are used as scapegoat, is just because you don't know the mischief to be cured there. It's a grievous thing, and that is why the ordinary magistrates' courts did not handle. And that is why the framers of the law thinks that since the cattle rustling, and by the way, we're not talking about Karamojong cattle rustling, it is any cattle rustling. Could be the Samia rustling where? The law says cattle rustling. The law doesn't say Karamojong. So, therefore, if it is cattle rustling using gun, that is why it should be handled. So, I just want to emphasize that we shouldn't belittle a Karamojong issue. The gravity of criminal justice or the gravity of crime being exercised in Karamoja is far beyond ordinary judicial system. You have a group of 1,000 people, each armed, committing a crime at once in the interest of rustling. You're not talking one or two kilo and opio in a crime. No. So why wouldn't you therefore?
How many?
1,000.
Where do they pass? You are talking of absence of government.
And that is why I'm saying there's little knowledge about it.
No.
And that is why I said the history has been that people knew little, including the people of Ongam's village who thought we were running from famine. Where do they pass? The Karamojong come in units of formations like military. First of all, let me tell you about the acquisition of arms. When Amin was overthrown,
no, I know that.
Okay, the barracks was left open. The Karamojong went and grabbed it. When Lotua government was overthrown, the barracks were left. They went and overthrew it. Amin took the guns. Then there's gun proliferation from South Sudan. There's enough gun. So how they move is Karamojong are organized in formation like military, like a brigade or a division. 1,000 people will move in a single line from Karamoja, passing through Utuke district, through a Leptong district, through Lira district, up to say Kole district. In single file. Sometimes they would pass on Monday, then coming back from Uyam is like Friday, when they have now come in extended line with guns, sweeping every animal that is. Imagine the number of districts they have passed. Abim, Utuke, Aleptong, Lira, Kole. And then they move in extended, and each extended line covers like 5 kilometers, and they'll sweep all the animals. They are armed, everybody with armed. So this gravity of a crime, do you think you're going to have a magistrate seated in a court? Never. You can't. So that is why it is covered under this AMPI. That you have 1,000 people raiding with guns, and you expect that we shall pick the 1,000 and take to the magistrate. Magistrate ourselves will not even sit in that court. So, about the supremacy of a civil court and the fair trial, therefore, and for the political opponents. The supremacy, first of all. Let's wait for the draft. If the draft proposes appellate system to merge to civilian courts, that is when you will see whether or not this one is supreme. As I said earlier, there were, for a long time out of practice, civilian courts were superior because from a court martial appeal, people were appealing to court of appeal, and it was working until the court said it was not correct. Okay, and the reason the Supreme Court said it was wrong was they're saying that appellate provision was created by a regulation passed by a minister, Amama. They're saying if it was to exercise appeal, it must be an act of parliament. So to answer your question of supremacy, let's wait for the bill and we see if the bill provides for supremacy. Maybe if the bill provides, some people will cool down to say, after all, we have remedy up. Even if you mess it up at the court martial level, there is a room for provision up. let the civilian court decide. But yet we can't say anything much. It is a speculation. Let's wait for the bill. So that is my answer about supremacy. About a fair trial, I said, the Supreme Court said people sitting in that court should be qualified lawyers. And the army is rectifying that. That is part of the fair trial. As the fair trial about the complainant, the accused, and the jury and all that, it will be discussed on the merits of its own. I believe the members of parliament will raise it in parliament. But still, as it is now, court martial believes it has systems and safeguards of fair trial, to the extent that even if an accused has no defense, the court martial provides a defense counsel. Of course, counsel will say, but that is your own defense counsel. But the defense counsel really argue. And the attempt by all, the provision of a defense counsel at the provision of the court is to ensure fair trial. So all ingredients are put in there to ensure fair trial. Okay? Now, on the issue of political opponents, well, this is subjective. Anybody can declare Opio was arrested because he prophesizes another political views. But the good thing is when you go to court, ingredients of an offense is mentioned. So even if you grab a political opponent and take to that court, everybody will know that whatever you have charged meet the ingredients. If you just grab Opio because he prophesizes another political views and dump him in that court, which ingredients of the offense will you bring? There's no ingredients of offense like, is my political opponent, so charge him. So that is that. So my view is that we are at this level, of course, debating with anticipation. We are not sure what the bill proposes, but it doesn't hurt to speculate. But the gist of the matter here is that the government and the party for that case, which is a party in power, is alive to the fact that Article 92 provides you don't pass a legislation to defeat a court ruling. And we still stand a chance of even another court case coming up.
Yeah.
For anybody to be charged under this. If a law is passed that a civilian is again charged, I am sure somebody will again pick up a constitutional case. Maybe the lack of popularity of the charges. For example, if somebody committed a crime of rape with a gun, I am sure few civil society may take up and say, okay, this one has raped, but why are you charging him in court martial? He has raped anyway, but take him to, maybe there will be less, well, some civil society may take it up on their own, even without that. But because the exception created is so tagged to a crime that you may not easily go to raise it. For example, Ochieno has raped using a gun. No, even if he has raped, please, we are taking a constitutional court. It lacks popularity. For the Karamojong, you have got 1,000 people raiding, and then somebody will go to court to say, no, we know they have raided and they have killed in Kitgum, they have killed in Palabek, but take them to civilian court. It's up to those who will take it up.
Okay. Thank you. But also, lastly, which is something you can respond to later, I think a lot of people feel, why the rush? Why can't we first go through elections? There's already so much that we have to deal with as a country. Why can't we have the amendments done at a later time? But you'll respond to that.
In which case, it would then become a matter for political conversation that you put it as a proposal that, in the event that we elected at the next election, this is, we would reconsider this. So that it becomes a manifesto commitment from your point of view, and then it's tested with the citizens, and other political parties take positions on that, and that actually happens in a democracy. In any case, actually, particularly if allegedly we are a stable nation state, as the NRA claim, then it's not a matter of life and death. It's not as if Salva Kiir and his opponents are going to march into Kampala. But that said, I'm rather concerned that Comrade Awich is in his attempt to almost let NRA get away with this thing.
In this successful attempt.
Seeks to bring in Karamoja, fair enough, because that is Museveni's primary argument, and turn Karamoja into the primary reason almost, for this, because there is no other viable argument. And in a way, for me, it sort of stigmatizes the Karamojong people as people who are not only so violent without prejudice,
Cattle
but
rustlers, not Karamojong, cattle rustlers.
people who are so difficult that you can only deal with them crudely militarily. But for Mr. Museveni, of course, that's the language he knows, and that's his language, that's his art. But no, this is the Republic of Uganda, this is not the Republic of Rwakitura. That said, it is actually quite clearly the case, that is a terrible indictment. One of the things that NRA has sought to argue with this nonsense about the security thing, we pacified Karamoja. Museveni even sent his wife there at a huge amount of money to keep her down there in Karamoja, pacified. Now my wife, darling, can go down there and, have a little bit of a gold rush, things, whatever kind of stuff, and back. Karamoja. So then this is this Karamoja that are so terrible people that we must have a specific provision for them that they cannot go through due process of law except a crude military court martial. They are so difficult, they can't be dealt with. Can I tell you? Contrary to popular opinion, the second UPC administration, as of 1984, Comrade Awich is right, that cattle rustling came back thanks to them, the NRA guys and their DP-Weds when they overthrew the government and things came out of control. Hence arms, going back to civilian hands. By 1984, UPC successfully worked out, Sarah, a system where local communities, community elders and chiefs, the Karamojong that we call impossible, difficult people, to engage in exchange, pulling back disarmament. And it worked. As of 1984, there is a sitting member of parliament, I don't want to call her name. Her father was actually one of the successful, and she's the siding, county chiefs who actually led in this process. And it's official. I'll tell you, it's a lady member of parliament. Her father was one of the county chiefs responsible for this process where people brought in guns are settled. And as of the time of the coup, this thing was nearly coming to a settlement. So I don't want the idea to be presented that Karamojong people are impossible people to have a conversation with. The only thing you can do is to break them and to break them using force. Number two, if Karamojong issue, rustling is a security issue as it is, a political issue, you deal with as a state, hence failure of state, as Sarah says. What do? In 1970, Karamoja, in primary living exams, Karamoja was the second to our Bukedi in PLA results, performance. Bukedi got 96.6%, first grade. Karamoja got 96 PLA. So what do? The Karamojong don't want court martial. The Karamojong want genuine investments in social and public services that creates new lawyers, new doctors, docs, cattle dips, privileges that the Balalo have up to and including in stolen land in Acholi. That's what the Karamojong want, to try and help pacify that place. Not a special court for them and a special prison for them granted by crooked oil, bad maize provided to them by Mr. Museveni. That's what the Karamojong do want.
Thank you. Let me come to you, Dr. Sarah.
Sometimes...
But also, Sarah, if you could also help us understand any potential for further legal, issues or challenges that might come up.
But why would we create a problem and then we are saying people can go to court? That's part of the arrogance and impunity. Why create a problem in the first place? So for me, any argument that says if there's a problem, then another petition should come up is a demonstration of impunity. Sometimes it gets depressing in being a Ugandan. We have things we are supposed to do, important things. Then we focus on evil and entrenching evil to benefit a small clique of people in power as a country. You look at, for example, what does the country stand to gain? from trying civilians
yes,
in court
that's
martial.
true.
What do we stand to gain? Other than the ego of President Museveni to say, I must do this, I must be a Chief Justice. He wants to be a president, a Speaker of Parliament, and Chief Justice, controlling all arms of government.
Yeah.
Other than satisfying his personal ego, that courts cannot rule Uganda, that courts cannot do away with the trial of civilians in court martial, what else do we stand to gain? Zero. Of course, people will go to court, but why do you create intentional problems to waste citizens' time, money, and court's time, when courts are supposed to be handling serious issues, fixing problems in society? It's like saying, let me build a forte house, then my children will break it down, they will build theirs. You can't make a grand such house and stay in it. When you die, they set it ablaze and you're gone. Why do you waste people's time to demolish whatever? You go and be in a grand such house. If you don't want anybody to inherit it, they can set it on fire. It doesn't, all you need is a matchbox. So these NRM people, and when I say this, I don't mean you as a person, but you are here representing the ruling party, the regime, and defending evil, that they are the mischief they intend to legislate, instead of identifying problems, they identify problems to create for Ugandans. I did submit that a person cannot be a judge in their own case. It's a principle, It has the Latin maxim. It has all principles and defenses. You are not devoid of bias. You are not devoid of, the conflict of interest. You're not. And the army is there saying this is our jurisdiction, which is in the Constitution. But they also want to say we are the complainant, investigator, prosecutor, and judge. Does it really make sense? And we need to question the lawyers who take to the podium.
Can you imagine?
To defend this
Mm.
evil. If Besige is trying, I will use, because it's a current case, I'll keep using Dr. Besige. If Dr. Besige is undermining security, who is the aggrieved party? The immediate aggrieved party is the entity in charge of maintaining security. The army. Who is the complainant? The army. Who has information of whatever Besige is alleged to have done? The army. And they want to sit and judge. And then Ugandans should clap. What nonsense. What nonsense. If you have your evidence, why are you scared of going to normal courts? Why?
But we are past that level, sir.
We are at that level. That's why you are taking us. I used Besige as an example. I don't mean Besige per se. That's why you are taking us. You are in charge as security of marking and tracing guns in the country. When you fail and the guns are traced in wrong hands, why don't you compile your evidence, take it to court? In the judgment of Justice Ochieno, there is an option of saying there could be special sessions. Why don't we create a special session
That's interesting.
for civilians found in possession of guns, instead of creating a stupid law where you are judges in your own case? We have a special session on domestic violence.
Actually,
we have a criminal session. We have a civil session. Let's create a session for civilians found in possession of arms. And then we see how many are they. Does the court need to rotate all over the country to handle them if they are all over? If they are in Karamoja, like Ukraine, Karamoja. As much as there is a problem in Karamoja, but the problem in Karamoja is a governance question. The people in Karamoja, because of the harsh weather they found themselves in, survived on wrestling for a long time. Who has failed to rehabilitate them? The person called government. Pre-colonial, post-colonial, NRM. There have been attempts, of course, but they are not conclusive. NRM takes the biggest blame in my view. 40 years. 60% of our post-independent Uganda. You have failed to solve one question called Karamoja. You have failed to create irrigation schemes in that
Which
same
is
arid
the point of
country.
Yes, yes.
You have failed to, there are so many proposals. Break the culture by creating compulsory primary
Yes,
schools.
diversifications.
Boarding,
Yes.
compulsory boarding, primary and secondary schools.
Yes.
Get the young people out of this culture.
Which is what we tried.
Create irrigation schemes.
Precisely.
Create alternative, diversify means of living.
That's right.
The recent attempt to give them permanent houses or iron sheets were stolen by cabinet. Then they go telling people, Karamoja, Karamoja, Karamoja. What nonsense. We need to reach a time when citizens are going to get up in big numbers and tell NRM to shut up and stop their nonsense.
So I want to start from there. You know, this government of mine is like a parent who has failed to buy food, for the family. And the leader of the family spends the whole night singing music to the hungry kids to be happy, to laugh and be okay. I have been watching TV recently. The president is moving around demonstrating how PDM success is. And you look at a country with the graduates are following the president. The president is deceiving people. The most recent, I saw a man, a priest also who has been duped in Greater Mubende. I forgot his name. And he was showing developments which have taken place, have taken 20 years to put in place. I was looking at things that he's doing. And he was saying, PDM. This one I started in this year, this one I started in this year. And they were telling people, success story of PDM, which is not yet 2 years. This is the second financial year.
How much money does each farmer receive?
1
Because
million.
the whole
1 million.
parish.
1 million.
So 1 million, can you create those things?
Yeah, so that's what
You
I'm
can't
telling
even
you.
buy a cow.
That's what I'm telling
No.
you.
I don't
You
really
see,
want to know
you see a
this.
country of deceit. Somebody is talking about a farm of cows. A cow, for those who may not
Minimum
know,
is 3 million.
it takes 9 months for a cow to give birth. And therefore, if they give you 1 million and you buy a cow, you need 2 years to get a calf out of the cow.
Doctor's information, and I will speak authoritatively from Western Uganda. 1 million, you can't even buy a calf. You can't.
Let's assume it is there. You know, for us, we have these cows which are
Small.
cow goat.
Maybe.
It can be the one.
But I think Sarah is making an important point about the uniformity of the argument.
So for me, this is what brings us to this level which we are debating now. This deceit, open deceit in the country. And people kill up. And the other day I was arguing with a man. He told me he has a PhD in economics from Netherlands. And I was saying, did this man, did they cut off the head which got PhD and put another one that he
from
carried to his
Chankwanzi?
country? Because PDM is 2 years. It's 2 years. It has run for 2 years. So you can only show us things which are starting up. They are starting up, maybe growing crops which have grown, but even coffee would have not reached. It is still in 1 meter.
Yeah.
So please, why don't people tell the president? So is security. You know very well that the role of UPDF is to defend the country border and from any enemy, internal and external. The way Major has described the Karamojons, they become a huge enemy of Uganda, which should be dealt with by UPDF. You can imagine people, 5,000 people, he said 1,000, in a single file. You know, I come from the university, and I deal with the students.
Mm.
If you told the people to line up 1,000 of them
With a gun.
with the guns, these are really, you would need to transfer all the army for Uganda to deal with that situation. What division is in Karamoja? Second division? Which division?
But why don't they put enough military to start?
So that division needs to do its work.
God.
You don't need to come and bore us that you are doing that
moving.
because you want to create a law to punish men with the guns in a single file, terrorizing people.
Moving through
But,
4 districts.
But to tell you
Really?
the truth about Karamoja, I have done simple studies on Karamoja. Karamoja has been a very unfortunate region in Uganda since colonialism. Colonialists took the bigger part of Karamoja and declared it a park. And
And
Karamojans
those are the fertile soils.
were boxed in a very small place. When our governments came, they maintained that rhetoric. And any student or any person may think that Karamojongs are cattle rustlers. In Karamoja, there are just a few criminals who are like in every place, who become cattle rustlers. And even the Karamojong culture, they are wrong people. They even curse them. Of course, they neighbor their brothers, the Pokot in Kenya. The issue of the guns, it has been neither here nor there. In fact, some societies have claimed that the Karamojongs got more guns during NRM. That's when the guns became so many, and they think they were being used to disable the communities which were there, who they thought were problems. You know, Yoweri normally says the Chiekera way of doing things. You remember Teso?
Yeah.
Teso,
That's true.
when NRM came here, had the largest number of cows
Cattle,
in
yeah.
Uganda. They had it by census of cattle,
Yeah.
Teso region. As we talk now, they don't have the cattle. They allege that the cattle was stolen and taken to Karamoja. Karamoja is not the largest cattle region in Uganda. They had theirs, they stole the ones of the Itesots, but at the end of the day, the largest number of cattle now is elsewhere. So I heard one time, in fact, outside this country, and we were wondering, where does these cows that are stolen from Karamoja, from among the Pokot and the Turkana go? Is something we need to investigate. So, Major, you are making this thing look very complicated. If you want us to go to the most complicated thing, we have a lot of information about the Karamojong situation in Uganda. But let's leave that and we finish this. For me, I want to think that looking at our MPs, members of parliament, how our parliament is structured, how our society is structured, I still convince myself that if they took this thing, however bad it is, you were quoting here Article 92, they will start by amending that one. They will start by amending that one because they have amended very serious articles in the Constitution.
Yeah.
So,
To justify the
yeah,
100 million.
so those ones, leave them alone. Let's just hope that maybe President Museveni, pressure comes on him maybe of 2026 and he abandons the idea. But the way I know him, when he's committed on something, he makes sure that he, by the way, I hope you know the meaning of his name, Tuhaburu.
No, I
tell,
don't.
I used to tell people about that name, and somebody almost, I was doing my research, and I discovered that is the name he was admitted to University of Dar es Salaam. I told people, they said, that bogus that is not the name. Tuhaburu means.
It was illegal to use those names in the 90s, by the way.
Means,
Yeah, to call Mr. Museveni that name.
But for me,
That's
this
official,
is what
yes.
they have told me. A person who is not easily advised.
The person who
Does not
doesn't
listen.
take advice.
Yes. So when he is
Seriously?
when he is committed to something, you have seen how I have just given you an example where he's wasting a lot of money for Uganda that is explaining to people PDM. PDM was 1 billion. I mean, 1
Million.
1 trillion, I think, last year in the budget. 1 trillion, one. This year they are proposing 3. But the money he's using to explain
1
PDM,
billion to
it is
inspect goats and
2.5
pigs.
billion every time you see him setting into a region. 2.5. So you need 2.5 times 4. Doesn't it make
10 billion.
10 billion? And like that. So if every day is spending 2.5, if he's in Mubende for 5 days, how many billions are those? If he goes to northern Uganda, but he wants people to understand. In fact, yesterday I was seeing
He's
him
campaigning.
feeling very bad, that he feels bad, seeing people who are suffering, seeing that for him he cannot enjoy when people are suffering. He knows how to play on people's minds using reverse psychology and many things. So I see him convincing these members of parliament to do what he wants. Because the other day I was not here. They asked the president why he had given 100 million to MPs. Instead of answering the question, he said, go and ask those people, where are they taking the money that they are getting from outside? Well, how about they're not talking about it? The issue is you are the crusader against corruption, but you are bribing people. You are the one bribing people, because if the president gives MPs 100 million out, it's not their salary, it's not an allowance, it's not anything. What is it? It's a bribe. And if he accepts, because he did not deny that he has not given, he said instead, in his long letter, I have it, that go and ask them, where are they taking the money? So this one is supposed, according to that letter, if you read in spaces, he was answering, those people already have money which they are getting from abroad to destabilize the country. So I'm giving them this money to neutralize that. MPs are going to vote yes. I can tell you, those yellow dressed up people are going to vote yes, whether it is slaughtering Ugandans in those court martials. They will just vote yes. But he gave us a very good example. If Ugandans were sensible enough, they would look at the history of bad laws in Uganda. Starting, we don't want to go verify. He started with the Binjira case.
We have about 15 minutes.
Yes, I'm finishing. He started with the Binjira case. Very recently, we had the Mama Mbabazi case of Poma. Who did it affect most? And many others. These bad laws that we have come up with. But the trouble, most MPs are given a job which they are not worthy to do. And it is our societal problem. We vote 80% of MPs who don't even understand what legislation is all about. So when they reach here, they say, Mkura Gambiechi. And they go and tick. They tick yes, 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 and yes, yes. Because I really see, how can a sensible person be explained to the things that Major was explaining to us? That you see, this one, if he's raping with a gun, and the other one is raping with the what? So this one is, they are rapists. These guys are rapists. How can you explain that this one is a better rapist and this one is a bad rapist? They are rapists. They should all be gunned down if that the law says so. But our law does not say so.
Information.
Yes.
My land friend, Afanda Awich, knows the ingredients of rape. Whether you have a gun or a rope.
That's a rape.
Rape is rape.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's forceful access.
Aggravated,
Yeah.
maybe other
And
issues.
Forceful
our
knowledge.
courts
Kind
are
of knowledge
able,
of a
are
woman.
able to establish rape. Finally, you know, the president has given a verdict on our courts, that they are not quick, they are not fast, they are not accurate, they delay things, and sometimes they give bail and fail government to deal with its problems. But for me, I would ask like Sarah did, who should we blame? So that is why I started by saying the government is like a parent who has failed to provide food for their family. Then he starts singing for them lullabies so that they can sleep. Lullabies do not cure hunger. Deal with governance issues and the courts will be fine. Don't appoint judges because they are your friends. Don't put places and you don't. You can imagine up to very recently, if you go to the court system, they operate in a very bad, in fact, police, courts are things in Uganda which operate in very funny places. If you want to, if the only way you know that this is a barracks, it must be in shacks. Courts must be in very old things,
And even the army.
where the judges
And even army
have
barracks,
no
yes.
even where to sit. They are not there, as if they cannot be appointed, and so on and so forth. So those are the things we should be dealing with. Not saying that it's because this one is bad, it has failed, let's now create an army thing. Army men are not legal people. If somebody joins army, is a soldier, let them leave legal matters for courts of jurisdiction.
Thank you, Dr. Ojambo. Joseph?
Unfortunately, I want to conclude with Karamoja. I am a witness that in 1986, with my own eyes, in Otoboy, and I've said this and I've written about it several times, that I saw evidence of Karamojong of the South in a place called Otoboy, where thousands upon thousands of cattle, and thankfully it had rained the day before, had been rustled from Otoboy South. That was following a series of claims by citizens, predominantly from
benefit
Teso.
of viewers,
Yes.
where is Otoboy from?
Otoboy is slightly just north of Soroti.
Okay.
Yes, and so people had been talking about reports of cattle being put in those days in railway wagons before the NRGs broke rail wagons and many others. But this was thousands on graze to the south. So I witnessed for the first time this official thing about the Karamojong of the South. So talk numbers, cattle numbers, and of course those were officially known, quite established NRA soldiers. 1986. Fast forward, I have lots of information, lots of complaints from Karamoja. Some of the complaints from Karamoja Sarah is that some of the Karamojong legislators fear coming out to talk. Why? Because as we talk today, some of the alleged rustling and security are directly linked to military officers posted in Karamoja. And within the last 10 days, I have had a conversation with a very senior public servant in Karamoja who wonders about how special commanders who are appointed in those spaces are people who don't understand the language and culture, but they are literally doing cattle business in Karamoja today as we talk.
For information, Joseph, on one of the shows on UBC, we did propose that let the army mount curfews in Karamoja at night. Pass a law stopping movement of cattle at night and trace the movement.
Yes.
Because how does cattle leave Karamoja to the markets in Kampala? The late Colonel Semakula, when he was in charge of that brigade, he became so rich from cattle rustling. So the problem, the bottleneck is at the top of the bottom, the army.
Indeed, and unfortunately, we are having this conversation, and at the top bottom, people are suffering, continuing insecurity, and people are suffering in poverty. I have known many cases, I don't know to go too personal, cases where we rescue informal communities. I know cases, I think about 6 months ago, where a big elder in Karamoja died, and people, were gathering and there was no food. People through networks had to mobilize and organize food and take to some of those communities in those places. So these are things beyond the cattle rustling. So the governance question that Sarah raises is extremely important, but conclusively, whatever happened, I think it's a very important point that the two of you guys have raised, that strategically, structurally, maybe you guys as a polity level, that politically we need to revisit Karamoja. From a UPC perspective, I'm content with what our programs were and what would be. But I think generally we need to be able to have a conversation on how we're able to deal with some of the cultural issues, some of the socio-economic issues, including the question of land, and as you talk about the demarcations of the gazetting of some of the land into parks. But at the moment, I don't think that's the issue. The issue is access to water, access to reasonable grazing land at a collegiate level, and of course then the rest of the other facilities, including veterinary services, plus, and yes, diversification of the economy of Karamoja and the neighboring communities, which may include Lango and indeed part of Abim, which is Karamoja, but of course quite clearly a community which is slightly cultural, which is slightly low cultural linked. These are part of our republics, one of the hugest, one of the richest part of the Republic of Uganda. When we're discussing national issues, we shouldn't use them as a justifying equipment. Really, we need to look for a national holistic approach to resolving our national issues.
Okay, thank you. Major, Sarah, would you like to come in? A little bit, maybe. We have about 10 minutes to go, so...
Now, we are discussing the impending amendment bill of UPDF, which is intended to amend, among others, court martial. So that is the matter before us. And how do we find Karamoja in the center? It's because I suspect that among the exceptions where civilians will be dragged to court are civilians involved in cattle rustling. And why Karamoja? Because historically we know the biggest amount of cattle rustling has been done in Karamoja. You may not rule out cattle rustling in Bunyoro or cattle rustling in Nakasongola, but I think Karamoja comes in for this. Now, therefore, I like to say one, two about Karamoja and wind up on that. That hearing doctor talking about Karamoja, he talks like a real doctor with hypotheses, with imaginations. Doctor, that is far from reality. The people who know Karamoja, for example, to date, they have a different attitude. For example, the Eastern Teso and Eastern Lango and Eastern Acholi, do you know, because these people have known Karamoja in pre-Museveni, the entire Agago is fully NRM, all the MPs. The entire Tuke is fully NRM. Coming to this one of Alupu, Katakwi and the rest. Now, if you look at Katakwi, their views to Serere is predominantly FDC. Why? Because the Karamojong issues are understood differently from the two communities. The communities from the East know it and they saw it in pre-Museveni. So when you come and tell...
So if you are NRM, you are safe.
No, please understand my point. My point is, if you explain to somebody from Serere that there's, like the way he's saying Otuboy, NRM is the one who stole cows, a Serere man will believe, or young man will believe. If you tell a man from Otuke that the Karamojong did not steal it is Museveni, the Otuke man will look at you and say, what are you talking about? I know, we saw this in Obote's regime. Does it mean it was Obote stealing? For example, contrary to what he says, Obote attempted a militia called Diankala Aburu. Diankala Aburu means my cows will pass me when I'm dead. A similar militia was established in Iteso, in Acholi, in Lango. My cows will pass when I'm dead. This militia fought and failed. Completely, they failed. Karamojong continued raiding until NRA went. And that is why I'm saying you were quick to misinterpret and distort what I'm saying. What I'm saying is a Katakwian or Tukean who were raided in Obote and knows what Karamojong is will tell you, yes, I know them. They even killed my father in 1980. They took our cows.
So
this, I know that
this.
So therefore, the theoretical aspect and the reality of those who undergo raiding, they know it, they see it, they know their strength, and they have their views. As opposed to thesis and imagination. So the cattle rustling thing is real. They pose in big numbers. They pose a threat. They have, at times, they threaten to wipe a whole battalion of NRA when confronted. And you have to really be prepared, both in terms of armed struggle and in terms of the legislation to back it up. And the amendment, therefore, comes handy. On the issue of Tuboy, those are normal falsifications that we have had many times. In 1986, such a thing could not occur. For example, 35th Battalion in Namokora, the home of Tito, which did mischief. It was such an alarming thing throughout. So you can't talk of 1986 when NRA was like a group of saints. With court martial, by then court martial was hanging all over every other NRA and being put on fire. You had your time.
I don't want to go personal
so
here, but anyway. Yeah.
Any NRA then who had time. Forget about the railway Mukura that was in the long after 86, the railway incident.
87.
But at that time, even picking a chicken by NRA, you end up on a firing squad. You can't tell me in 86 that group of cattle was, which NRA, not the NRA was in.
How about
now, the question, briefly, the rush. Why the rush? The rush is to try to answer what the court said. Sarah talks of creating a problem to be solved by a problem. Me, I was just putting a possibility that if this law is amended, we still have one window of cure. I'm not saying you deliberately sit down, pass a law, let's wait for somebody to go to court. No. And Sarah seems to still to insist that there should be no army court because all criminal matters should be dealt with. But even your colleagues here say
that there should be an army court for service offenses. And that's the decision of court.
And that is why
yes.
If you even better, the court said they should be disciplinary committees.
Yes. That's the majority decision of court.
Then we shall debate the exceptions. Offenses. Now, the best thing you accepted is passed. The best thing actually suits my example of a contradiction that is resolved that put us to a higher level. The contradiction in this case was that Uganda passed that law, which was taking civilian to court, which took Kiza Besje. That contradiction was resolved in the Supreme Court ruling. It is now history. Besje is now in a civilian court. And that is how societal development occurs, by contradiction appearing and it is being resolved. Now, education, attempt on Karamoja education again. Karamoja NRM has not slept. Some of you are saying there should be boarding school. Did you know that attempt in boarding school failed until mobile education was introduced? Mobile education. Why? Because you put people in one place, you build school, they move away. So government said, okay, if you are moving away, we shall get blackboard and follow you. Today, there is mobile education. So all attempts have been made. Mobile education, did any of you hear about mobile education? Mobile education failed because settled education. People had abandoned settled education. And now government had to initiate mobile education. Finally, I think I may talk about the president and PDM. Dr. seems to insist that it is not use of money. You see, a president is fountain of honor. And if a president keeps communicating, it has impact. For example, did you know that if President Museveni started saying, whoever produces firstborn boy, if you produce firstborn boy, kill, you know that people will start killing.
Those in NRA.
Why? A president's word is quasi-judicial. Look at HIV/AIDS. When HIV/AIDS came, people used to whisper in silence. It was President Museveni who said, please, let's talk openly about it. And we talked. And you saw the impact it had in prevention of HIV/AIDS. So a presidential engagement and a presidential talking has impact. That is why the president has gone down himself to say, let me talk to people for poverty alleviation. So the president's touch on this thing is very important because the president's word is taken seriously. It has almost quasi-judicial effect. And that is why we have seen in the case of HIV/AIDS. Okay? Final about building. Doctor is saying that the judicial officers are living in bad places. I don't seem to agree. For a long time, there was a program under justice law and other sector. If you have gone all over the places, courts have been built. prosecutors' offices have been built all over. If anything, it is one of the most successful programs. I don't know whether at one time it was with the support of the
former Gomborora offices.
Let me count one by one.
I need us to
one
really
by
wrap
one.
this
Commercial
very
court in
quickly.
Uganda here. The High Court, Supreme Court, and Court of Appeal. In Mukono, tell me the court in Mukono. In Umpiji, tell me the court in Umpiji. Where? In Luero, as you are going towards Gulu, where they sell gonja, tell me the court. In Kiriandongo, see the courts. Everywhere courts are being developed. Come on, let's give credit where it is due. Both the courts and the prosecution. And for your info, Dr.
Yes.
Eba.
I remain silent.
Okay, so I will give you. Sorry, you want to say something too, or you'll just.
Court
come and
premises
I just
in
conclude.
Okay, let me
Uganda.
just give Joseph.
Tell me a place where there's no court deal.
Okay, gentlemen.
And mine will just be a conclusion. Mine will just be a conclusion. But I'm persuaded to talk about the fact that while Robert was referring to the judicial system, he also referred to the police and also said the army. And anybody who goes to Robonge barracks will see how terrible our soldiers live in those places. And anybody who goes around police barracks and army, and these are our people. We are talking about utilization of services because while we are saying the people should not be tried in civilian, in military spaces, we are also saying these are our citizens and people who join these spaces should not be living in shacks, when Mr. Museveni is abusing billions of our money. That said, to conclude, Comrade Awich, I respect you. You are NRA and you are an NRA child soldier. And so therefore, you may not have seen what happened. But I want to tell you, Judith, on the day one that NRA landed in Kampala, I was amongst the first people, people to see them. These little boys who were literally being abused by Museveni dragging guns. I was at Makere. In Kampala, Comrade Awich, between January 1986 and February, within weeks, there are condoyers and tortures here in Kampala by NRA. So the idea that these are funny saints who do absolute nonsense. They committed crimes in Luwero. We can't talk about that. But here in Kampala, they did. Number two, my uncle's shop, 1986, within a couple of months, in Nagongera, broken into by soldiers from Rubange barracks. NRA, this bandit. My uncle is still alive. I don't want to mention his name. In fact, it is in there that I challenged Fox Odoy's brother, who was the cadre who came to say that, oh, this must just be these are the people. We understand you people here have people in the bushes. So they twisted, these NRA guys twisted that, oh, the insecurity is because people don't support NRA government. And I said in Mahanga, in Agongra Town Center, that look, how can you say that people, we say that, oh, Fox Odoy's late brother, oh, you have your people, children in the bushes. Are they monkeys? On the record. And I laughed and I said, because I was a confident student, I said, how can you say, people who stay in the bushes are monkeys when you guys are coming from the bush? Number two, broken in Nagongera and people killed. Number three, in Otoboy, I saw it because I'm a witness, because you're challenging my position, but we are not in the court of law. But finally, I think it's an insult to the people of Acholi. As early as March 1986, the beginning of war in northern Uganda started in March 1986, in fact, primarily May, when Acholi men, young Acholi men started disappearing. On record, that's how war in northern Uganda started. By who? NRA. So to present these guys as saying it's an absolute nonsense. No, you guys, we've gone through a process. People have died. NRA bandits committed atrocities in Luwero, atrocities around the atrocities in this country, and atrocities up to and including Karamoja. All we're trying to say that where we are at the moment, let's find a way in which we're able to reconcile, find an amicable way in which we're able to resolve our historical and contextual issues. And that's all we're trying to say. And I think to use Karamoja, a community that has been used and abused and raped, to justify a criminality that is now taunting somebody like Kizza Besigye, struggling here, open like this, is an impunity and is something which is indefensible.
Thank you.
I did say that some things are very depressing. Uganda is not a developed country. The achievements of President Museveni is not what people expected when he came. regardless of the issues that happened. Of course, war is not a tea party, and where two groups are fighting, nobody can claim to be an angel. But if you look at the promise that the world thought, Uganda finally, the likes of Dr. Matembe, when they were like, never again. And then today you see it and you're like, it is still the same person, it's still the same things. There is even no more justification of why we fought. Anybody who makes such statements of, we fought for this, that, one day they need to be called to order, because it no longer makes sense, not even to the people. And I'm saying this as a child born in a UPM family, as a family that participated in the war, as a family that participated in President Museveni's takeover of power. It no longer makes sense. So we need to think of Uganda as a country, leave this sloganeering that is useless, question each other, leave things that don't add value. And if a leader no longer adds value, they also need to know that their time is well spent and they need to go, like President Museveni.
Thank you. Dr. Ojambo.
Yeah, I think most of the things have been said. To start from where we started, you asked us a question whether they are going to pass the law. Unfortunately, if it is taken there at whatever, whether they are saying that they slaughter all of us, they are going to approve it the way it is, so long as they
Even
can.
them, even if they are included.
So long as they can, so long as they can give them something small, they can give them something small, and then there will be these guys who are coached. NRM, they coach one person, and the person coaches everyone. They speak as if they are possessed, all of them. They are going to pass that thing. But me, I think the best thing would have been to reflect and improve on the judicial system in Uganda, the justice system, so that there are so many problems bigger than these issues people are talking about. I've just told you that in the villages of Uganda now, it is very difficult for somebody to rear goats or chicken, and they sleep in a different house where he's not sleeping. People can no longer live.
They have to watch over their
They
goats.
have to sleep with their goats in the
some
same
do
house.
actually.
Those are big problems that are
That's
affecting
why we
people's
need the
life.
law.
But now people are dealing with what guys are dressing on, because guns these days in Uganda, we are used to them. People are with the guns. If you just read the stories of these robbers, the robbers who have been in Kampala here, and they are telling you how they were picked from the street from robbery, taken to establishments of police and investigation, and given guns
To go and
to go and
rob.
terrorize people.
Yeah,
So that one is a story which
the
we don't want.
testimony of Sobi.
Me, I really want to encourage.
Why didn't they, by the way, take him to court martial? Sobi.
Me, I really want to encourage Ugandans to put pressure on the MPs. To put pressure on the MPs. If that thing is tabled, we need where if an MP stays in your place, go and camp there, and with something telling him that if you pass that law, you will have caused us trouble.
Thank you very much. Major, you want
I
to
just pray that the
MPs
MPs should pass law, like I started, that law is for posterity. And law has no party, has no color. And therefore they should pass law which will augment society. Because as I said earlier, good laws augment society, good laws encourages production, and good laws leads to good livelihood of the people. So I pray our MPs will exercise their legislative power, and we call on God to give them wisdom and do the right thing.
Okay, thank you very much. And that also brings us to the end of this edition of the Citizens Chat Show. Just a reminder, we've been looking at the UPDF Amendment Bill 2025, and we've been asking, will Parliament defy the Supreme Court? Thank you very much to my guest, Dr. Robert
Can we
Ojambo.
wish the people happy Easter?
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah, I want to wish all the viewers of Citizen Chat, Civic Space TV, and the Citizen Space
A happy Easter.
A happy Easter.
Yes, happy Easter from all of us here. We do
Happy
appreciate
Easter.
you for
There's
your
nothing
time.
happy about the Easter. We shall just continue suffering.
So, Dr. Robert Ojambo, thank you again. Thank you, Dr. Sarah Bireete. Thank you, Mr. Joseph Ochieno, and thank you, retired Major Awich Pollar. My name is Judith Atim, and to you who is watching, we do appreciate you very much for choosing this show. And please engage with us. We'd like to hear from you. Drop us a comment in the comment section. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the challenge. Also like and share. And to our younger viewers, we're on TikTok as well. You can find us there. Also follow us on our social media platforms, on Facebook at Civic Space TV, on X, and many others. We're also on Instagram too. So do follow us on those platforms and do leave us a comment. Happy Easter once again. See you after Easter.